Well, I know I'm a day late, but I have a good excuse. I was boozing with my wife, and I didn't want to make it, so there you go. Now on to the Argents. So the first common I wanted to go over today was SHARDWORK Heart. It's a zero-cost augment gear that reads, equip only to target SHARDWORK unit. The equipped unit ignores animate. So animate is a new ability in this set, although it's really not a good ability. It's something that is required of these new Argent SHARDWORK archetypes that require you to animate or tap how many shards are required to actually attack or block. So this is a very integral piece in that archetype because you can slap it on for 0 cost, and then your big monsters or smaller monsters, because there are some decent smaller ones, don't have to tap every time that they want to attack or block. So this is a very good card, and it can be searched out by Liam, which is really, really cool. It makes it very viable. Now we're going to take a look at our first SHARDWORK unit, SHARDWORK Angel. It's a 3-cost unit, robot angel with unblockable, and as you can see here, it has an animate 1. That means you need to pay 1 shard just to have it attack or block. So 3 cost, 2500 power is pretty good power for that cost, and it has unblockable, so it has a very good ability, but that animate is holding it back. So if you have that SHARDWORK Heart, you know, you're all Gucci. So not too bad, but you're going to see here there are some crazy good SHARDWORK cards in this set for the Argent element. Now we have PRIMEVAL Acid Monger. It's a 2-cost unit with 1500 power. It's a beast, so it could fit into some air decks. And it reads, whenever this card declares an attack, you may destroy target augment. So these Acid Monger cards, we've seen a bunch of them even since the beginning of the game. They're really nice. I mean, being able to destroy augments, especially this one with a 2-cost, 1500 power, it's right where you want it to be for that cost, the power level at least. And it has a decent effect. It also has a good subtype, so this one might find its way into some decks as a tech choice. Moving on to SHARDWORK Titan, 5-cost unit, robot Titan with 3500 power. And it has Destroyer and Guardian, but he has an animate 2. So he is costly. This is another one where they have really, really good abilities, but at the same time, you have to tap 2 every turn just to do something. So this is a very interesting archetype. It's really cool. I like what they did here. I also like the support that they have as well. So I'm actually really excited to build a deck revolving around SHARDWORKs. Next, we have SHARDWORK Knight. It's a 4-cost unit with 3000 power and has the Brawler and Guardian ability with Animate 2. So this one I think is lackluster. The Brawler ability is very good, but you're only going to get use out of that if you pay 6, because you have to pay 4 to bring it in and then animate 2 more times just to have it attack that turn. So yeah, this one's definitely lackluster in my opinion. Now we're taking a look at Cultist of the Forgotten One. It's a 3-cost unit with 2000 power, and it's a Cultist sub-archetype. And it reads, units and augments with arrive abilities cost 2 more to play. This is a pretty cool card. This is first of its kind, increasing the cost of augments and units that have arrive. I think it's a pretty good side deck card. You know, if you ever go up against something that has a lot of arrive abilities, I'm trying to think right now of what does. The game itself just revolves around a lot of arrive abilities, so it's kind of just a good card in general, but it also works against you as well. It's not just your opponent, so double-edged sword there. Next, we have SHARDWORK Hound. It's a 1-cost unit with 1500 power, and it has target attack, but it also has animate 1. I actually think this one is really good. Even with the animating 1, it's still a nice card to have at 1 cost with 1500 power, and just tapping, you know, 1 per turn even to let it attack whatever it wants is still kind of nice. I think this is a really good early drop for the SHARDWORK archetype. So I think this is probably a 3 of. Moving on, we have Temple of the Forgotten. It's a 2-cost augment, location augment as well. And it reads, triggered abilities of units with cost equal to the number of counters on this card do not trigger. And then you can exhaust it and choose one, either put a counter on it or remove a counter. Not a big fan of this card. It's pretty situational. It's also going to take a couple turns to actually even get it where it needs to be. And I don't know. I feel like this one's kind of easy to play around. So not a huge fan of this. Moving on, we have Hokken Fighter. It's a 2-cost unit, 1500 power, and it's just a basic unit. So you can fit this into some light basic decks if you wanted to. I actually like this one because light synergizes with the Argent element a little bit, because Liam's really nice to grab that SHARDWORK heart. So this guy might find its way into some pretty cool basic unit decks. Now we're taking a look at Hokken SPRITE. It's a 1-cost unit, 1000 power, elemental, and then it also reads, arrive, each player draws a card. I don't like this card. Giving your opponent more cards is never a good thing, so yeah, terrible. Next, we've got Hokken HARE. It's a 1-cost unit with 500 power. It's a beast, and it has a ruin ability that reads, search your deck for a unit with cost 1 and add it to your hand. I really like this card. This card can be splashed into almost anything. It pairs really well with Serpio, obviously, as you can trigger its ruined ability whenever you want. It's nice to put in the new Eva Eerie archetype to search some of their lower cost units that help with the sacrificing effects of their cards. And it's also nice with Iton as well as the green champion, because it's a beast, so it fits into the beast element kind of sub-archetype, as well as being able to scale up with Iton and then also search. So I really like this one. This is a great generic 1-cost card. Moving on, we have SHARDWORK Factory. It's a 1-cost augment location that reads, this card gains the following abilities based on the number of SHARDWORK units you control. If you control 1 or more SHARDWORK unit, you get plus 500 for all your SHARDWORKs. And then 2 or more SHARDWORK units you control animate for 1 less. And then 3 or more, the SHARDWORK unit you control with the highest cost cannot be targeted by your opponent's spells or abilities. This is a really good augment for the SHARDWORK archetype. You know, it stacks. So basically, if you have 3 SHARDWORK units, you'll get all 3 of those effects. They'll get plus 500, they'll animate for 1 less, and then your strongest one won't be able to be targeted. So really cool augment for the SHARDWORK archetype. I think this one is played in multiples for sure. Moving on now to MARROW SLURPER. It's a 2-cost unit with 1500 power. It's a beast, and it has an arrive ability that reads, expel target unit from your opponent's discard zone. You can pay 1, discard this card, and expel target from your opponent's discard zone. So it's sort of like Bone Scavenger, a little more versatile, but then also worse as well, and less versatile. The more versatile, because you can play it directly from your hand, your opponent won't see it coming, so it's harder to play around. But also at the same time, it's not gaining anything, and it only has the arrive of Bone Scavenger, where Bone Scavenger alone destroys Aragon decks. This one really doesn't, but it's still a nice little card. Adam also had mentioned that they're adding a lot of cards to expel from the discard zone, so maybe he's predicting a possible banning of Bone Scavenger. I don't think that's needed, but at the same time, the fact that Bone Scavenger completely shuts down Aragon decks is kind of depressing, especially if you're an Aragon player. So maybe. It might be warranted. Who knows? But this card, regardless, is still a very good card. Next, we got Hokken Markets, a 2-cost unit augment location, and it reads, pay 2, draw a card. Both players may use this ability. Yeah, bad. Anytime you allow your opponent to use your cards while you also paid for the card is a bit of a bummer. If it was 0 cost, I think it would be interesting. It might warrant something, but having to pay 2 and then have your opponent be able to benefit from it, yeah, I don't get this card. All right, so our last common is Hokken Archaeologist. It's a 2-cost unit with 1000 power, and it reads, augments you control cannot be targeted by spells or abilities. And then it also has an arrive ability that reads, you may search your deck for a non-location augment and add it to your hand. If you do, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. This card is very good. I think this is a fantastic support card for augment related decks. I think it's really cool for the Great Magamaze. They needed something to protect their augment. I know they had 1 card, but it had to sacrifice itself, and it was only for that turn, which was not viable for that kind of deck. But this one, I think, actually gives it a real chance now. And then on top of that, it's just good in general. There's tons of really good augments, and the fact that you can search them out directly with this is really cool. There's even some legendary ones that weren't really searchable before. So, yeah, I really like this one. Now we're going to move on to the rares. So our first rare is Elemaster Aurora. So Elemasters are new sub-archetype in this set as well. Each element kind of has their own Elemaster that are all Argent, but they have certain effects if certain towers are destroyed, and then also if you control, a certain elemental unit. So let's look at these. So the first one is, as I said, Aurora, 2-cost unit, 1500 power, and she reads, this card gets plus 500 while your opponent has a destroyed light tower. And then if you control a light unit, prevent the first damage that will be dealt to this card each turn. So she has very good sustain. Other than that, though, I don't know if she's really worth it. I mean, it's not a bad card. I just don't know if you're going to waste a spot in here just to have something that has 1500 power, possibly 2000. That's kind of tough to kill. But also it doesn't, it doesn't protect itself against, the dark cards that just minus. It's only damage, so I don't know. Could go either way. Like I said, not a bad card, but I don't know if it's worth a spot. Our next Elemaster is Elemaster Cinder. It's a 2-cost unit, 1500 power, and it reads, this card gets plus 500 while your opponent has a destroyed fire tower. And also, whenever this card declares an attack, if you control a fire unit, target unit you control gains quickness this turn. This one, not too crazy about either. The fact that you need to do it when it declares an attack could be a bummer, because that means you have to bring out a card first that you want to gain quickness. And if you hit something, that could destroy it or affect it somehow, it's kind of like you wasted that resource. So also not a huge fan of this one either. Moving on now to Elemaster Coral, 2-cost unit, 1500 power. This card gets plus 500 while your opponent has a destroyed water tower. You can exhaust it if you control a water unit. Switch control of this card and target unit your opponent controls. Now this one I actually like. This one's pretty cool. Being able to swap this with something that is really big or strong or kind of a problem card for you is really cool. So this one I like a lot. Moving on now to Elemaster Squall, 2-cost unit, 1500 power. This card gets plus 500 while your opponent has a destroyed air tower. It has an arrive ability that says if you control an air unit, target unit you control gains overrun this turn. This one's pretty good. It's good arrive ability, and giving something overrun is really good. That's a very good ability. So not too bad, not too shabby here. Not as good as the previous one we saw though. And then our last rare is Elemaster Umbra. It's a 2-cost unit, 1500 power. It reads, this card gets plus 500 while your opponent has a destroyed dark tower. And it also has a ruined ability that says if you control a dark unit, target unit control gains destroyer. So this one's pretty cool too. So out of the Elemasters, I think we have 2 really good ones, this one and the water one, and then a decent one in the air one. So could be some interesting choices here. Destroyer is also a very good ability to give someone. Moving on now to the super rares, we have Hokken Adventurer, 2-cost unit with 1000 power. It has an arrive ability that reads, you may search your deck for a location augment and add it to your hand. Then draw a card for each location you have in play. This card's pretty cool. So we do have an Argent common, as we've seen already, that allows you to search any kind of augment other than locations. And now this one also searches locations. So locations are new in this set, and we only have a couple of them. But his second effect, being able to draw for each one you have, is pretty nice. I don't know if we are going to have any decks that are based on locations, but if we see some more maybe in the next set as well, this card can be really, really good. Right now, I think it's solid, but I don't know if you're going to have anything that is going to revolve around location augments. Next, we have SHARDWORK Dragon. It's a 2-cost, 2000 power robot dragon with quickness and animate 1. This is a really good card. Even needing to pay the animate cost, a 3-cost unit with 2000 power and quickness is fantastic. You know, for the longest time, people have been playing Silver Watchwoman because she was a 4-cost quickness. She also protected herself, which gave it added benefit, but she was pretty much a great game ender, and this one is the lowest cost quickness monster we have right now with this power. So very, very good addition. And then on top of that, if you have the SHARDWORK Heart in your hand, it can be a 2-cost quickness monster. So really cool addition to the SHARDWORK archetype. Next, we got Hokken Tinkerers Alex and Alex, which is a 4-cost unit, 2500 power. They are Adventurer subtype, and it reads, this card costs 1 less to play for each augment in play, and then pay 1, your opponent sacrifices an augment. This is a pretty solid super rare Argent for sure. Being on the field and just paying 1 each turn, forcing your opponent to sacrifice an augment is pretty devastating. And then also being able to reduce its cost is pretty nice. So definitely not a bad card here. It might be a little niche, but still pretty good. And last but not least, we're going to go over the 3 Argent rares for the Argent element. There is no secret rare for the Argent element, so they just got 3 Argent rares. So the first one is Hokken Warding Amulet. It's a 2-cost augment that reads, neither player can target cards in discard zones. Neither player can activate the abilities of cards in their discard zones, and you can only control 1 of these at a time. So this is just devastating to anything that revolves around the graveyard. There's a lot of really good cards in Aragon strategies that allow you to bring it back from the discard zone or target things in the discard zone. There's also plenty of cards in the game that if they're destroyed, you can bring something from the discard zone back. So this is a great anti-meta card. Really like it. The fact that you can only control 1 is probably a good thing, but it does not mean that you can only have 1 in your deck. You can have 3 of these. You can only just have 1 on the field at a time. Pretty devastating stuff. Pretty cool. And it can be searched out with that common card. Our next Argent is Fragment of the Forgotten One. It's a 5-cost unit with 3000 power, and it reads, trigger abilities of units and augments do not trigger. Once per turn, expel another unit you control. This card gains Immortal this turn. So another anti-meta kind of card for the Argent element. This one's also good. The thing that you need to remember, though, is triggered abilities and activated abilities are a little different. So exhaust abilities are activated abilities. So this will not stop exhaust effects. It will stop things that have trigger effects, something like the Blazewalkers. They all have trigger effects, just to give you an example. But anyway, still a really cool card, and the fact that it can protect itself by gaining Immortal is really cool. So another good anti-meta card, and the artwork is also super cool on this one. And then last but certainly not least is SHARDWORK Arbiter. So Lee from Tavern Brawlers spoiled this one, so if you want to know his thoughts, he also did a collab with some other members of the Tavern Brawlers. Go check that out for sure. But I'm going to talk about it here a little bit. So it's a 6-cost, 5000 power Arbiter, which is that new subtype that we have in here. So basically you can tap any unit you want to make this cost less, which is nuts on its own. And it has these abilities: Destroyer, Guardian, Overrun, Quickness, and Target Attack. And he does have an Animate too, which is costly, but if you have the SHARDWORK Heart, you can get all of these things essentially for free. I know that I said the Argent element does not have a secret rare, but this is essentially its secret rare. This card is absolutely nuts. I think it's one of the chase cards in the set. I'm really excited to play with this one. I think this is just devastating. The fact that you can use anything to tap it out and bring it in for free is pretty crazy, so it can be slotted into any kind of archetype or deck, which is super cool. You do just have to remember that you have to animate too, but it has Destroyer and Overrun and Target Attack. So animating 2 just for those 3 abilities is well worth it, even if you don't want to play the SHARDWORK card. But yeah, so that's my last one, guys. This has been the wrap-up of my Hokken set review. I hope you enjoyed all of these videos. I always enjoy making these. and I'm really excited to start building decks again and give you some deck profiles here in the near future. So like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Zeppelin out.